Two Bulls in a China Shop is brought to you in part by our sponsors and friends over at Manscaped, Trade Pro Academy, and Vanta Trading. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming with precision-engineered tools for your family jewels, and with a new and improved 2.0 version of the Weed Whacker now available, it's the perfect time to take advantage of our exclusive offer of 20% off and free worldwide shipping using promo code 2bulls at manscaped.com. As always, that is the number 2. And when it comes to institutional quality trading education, look no further than tradeproacademy.com. In our free Discord server, you'll find instructions to take advantage of our discount with them as well. And for anyone trading futures, check out vantatrading.com. Founded by Mr. W. Banks and Baba Yaga, they provide a ton of educational content with the focus of teaching aspiring traders how to build a repeatable, profitable process. Our exclusive discount code for Vanta can also be found in our free Discord server. We'll have all of those links and more in the episode description. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
You are listening to an entertainment program put together by a company called Financial Ineptitude. Anything said on this show is not an endorsement or professional advice. Would you really want to tell a court of law you were suing us because you thought taking financial advice from two idiots on a podcast put out by Financial Ineptitude was a good idea? Really? Clown hat smiley face.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the China Shop. I am your host, Kyle, and joining me today is Mr. Banks from Vanta Trading. But first, if you'd like to reach out with any suggestions, corrections, or shitty memes, you can do that via email at 2bulls at financialineptitude.com, or you can join our free Discord server, where a bunch of amazing people gather to share our struggles and lessons learned with other like-minded market aficionados. So now that we got the business stuff taken out of the way, let's check in with Mr. Banks. How are you doing today, man?
Good. How about you?
Not too bad. I think before we kicked off this call, I was white knuckling along. That flipped my day around, so I'm feeling pretty good about that.
That's always a good thing to flip the day around if you're a little bit red. So
It's not just the flipping the day around, because I know that's kind of a dangerous slope. That's something that, like, if you have issues with gambling, that's like the whole idea behind gambling problems, right? It's the trying to get back to break even.
Yep.
But to be able to like walk away, reset, come back, find a good setup, and still be able to execute it, like that's what I'm proud of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's continuing the process. Even on a down day, and being down in P&L wise, if sticking in the process and finishing green. It's more about continuing the process and continuing to build that process, and that's a great thing that happened today for you.
I appreciate that. Man, what's been going on at Vanta? You guys have been putting out some great content from what I've been seeing. I think you guys just did a town hall recently this past week.
Yeah, so we're trying to put out one town hall, or whatever you want to call it, where we just kind of do question answers once every 2 weeks or so. On top of that, we're trying to put out some trade reviews, nuances. I'm actually going to do one today about the trade yesterday that we I guess called out live on the mic. But just trying to help build process with new traders, experienced traders, and just the key with what the process means to your trading every day. And I think that's what has kind of made the difference in becoming profitable as a trader is more of the process behind it. There's no magic indicator. There's nothing along those lines, but the process behind every trade is what's key. And I think if you can continue to do that and build that every day, that's trying what I guess that's what we're trying to get accomplished in our room is just building that from the ground up.
Yeah, I love that. You guys call out your trades, but you also call out the reasoning and you explain that part. Like that's something that I think is missing in a lot of these other Discords that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think that the concept of like and I hate calling out trades because if it's a loser, I know
Right.
what my risk is, and I know what the R on the trade is, but I don't know what other people are trading, and I hate calling out trades. Like what I try to do is I try to describe the trade kind of going into it,
Right.
at least to explain where I'm looking, what I'm looking at. I will say I'm long, but it's more of the build up to that, to where I at least I can feel comfortable enough to say I'm taking this trade for XYZ. Now if they take it, that's what it is. But I'm not a big fan of calling out like the call out trades. Just for the fact that I don't know what each trader their risk is on that. I don't know where they're at in their days. So if it's one of those where I'm up on the day and I'm kind of, it's one of those innovative trades where it's not necessarily an A plus. It might be, A minus B or something along those lines. But I hate calling out those trades where it's saying I'm long and then someone follow me.
Especially when you're sitting on a green day and you're taking a trade that's a little more risky because you have the capital to play with it. Well, somebody who's been sitting around listening to you, like maybe he's read on the day and he's
Yeah.
watched all your trades work out and he gets excited about, fine, I'm going to take this one, throws on
Yeah.
max size, and next thing you know, you got a bunch of pissed off people.
That's a recipe for disaster. So,
But you speak like somebody who's fallen victim to that before, or at least the fallacy of trying to follow somebody else's trades. Like I know I've tried it before. It's the same thing like you always say. Like I don't know what the parameters are. I don't know where your stops are at. I don't know what you see that determines whether you want to flatten it or add to it. Like I don't know
yeah.
any of that.
Well, and two, when you're talking to those guys, or I guess even us in our room, like I try to be very transparent with like what I'm doing for fills or doing for stops, but at the same time, like when you're listening to someone, it's still your trade.
Hmm.
So when you're into it and you hear this guy has success or has this, well, he could say that it stops 10 points, but it stops 30 points. Well, you're going to have a lot more winners than losers when, if you're not being total, transparent. But at the same time, I mean, you're kind of counting on someone's expertise and not necessarily building your process. So, you're taking a trade based off of someone else's, you could, I guess, say alpha or whatever, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
but you don't know what actually went into that process unless it's described. And that's why I think like building out more of the trade, the whys behind it, and talking and doing more
Yes.
like the trade reviews and that type of stuff, I think is way more beneficial than just calling out trades, because you're helping them build a process.
More so than that is also the talking about the struggles too. It's another
Oh,
thing that
absolutely.
you and Baba have been very transparent about. When you have a bad day, you do the work and you review it and you share that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And I think that's one of the funny things is like, with the stuff that we've been doing recently, that came after like not a bad day, but it was just one of those days where it's like it seemed like nothing went right. Like
Yeah.
getting stopped
Yes.
out at the lows, getting stopped out at the highs. I'm just like, one of those days where it's just like nothing made sense. So,
Yep.
but those type of days are interesting because I feel like that's where you kind of dig your feet in a little bit and you kind of help build your process or even add stuff to your toolbox. And but it's interesting how those type of days, and I think that's something that even myself and a lot of traders, you have a green day and you see your P&L, you're happy about it, but when you look at those trades, like you could have been sized up to where it's not
Hmm.
necessarily a good thing. So, and I think the trade reviews are a great thing, or even going back and reviewing even green days, because there's a lot of stuff that you can overlook in a green day that on any other day, that's a red day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we just talked to Vico earlier this week. I think that recording should be out before yours, but he was harping a lot on replays, replay. If you really want to learn and get better, you got to do the replays. Finally started doing that. I don't know why I've resisted it for so long, but I mean, doing the first day of it, I'm like, okay, I see the benefit to this now. And like you said, like good day or bad day,
Yeah.
like you can learn from both.
Well, and two, that there's a lot of these replays that you can do where it actually puts your fills on there. So
Hmm.
like when you're going back and looking at it, it's kind of like watching a movie. Like you can watch it the first time, but if you watch it two, three, four times, you're going to pick up on stuff that you didn't necessarily catch the first time. That you could
Yes.
have, on that same setup, you could have said, well, I entered on this, but why didn't I enter 5 points lower on this? And kind of build that,
Yes.
kind of build the, I guess, a better trade on the ones that are successful, and then on the ones that are losers. Not every trade is going to work. I mean, there's a piece of it is just doing business, but there's something to learn from those as well.
Shit, you just segued into one of the topics I wanted to cover with you, but I wanted to talk about something else beforehand
Yeah, that's
because
fine.
it tied in with the what we were talking about earlier. Uh, Trading in a spotlight. Like you've kind of talked about like how you don't like throwing signals out there because you don't want people following you, but what kind of pressure does that add to you? Like how does that affect your actual trading? Like being in the spotlight when people are watching your moves.
Yeah, so I think that it can put a lot of pressure on you. I know, like when you're like, there's something I'm doing now. I just finished one of the combine accounts. I'm looking at doing like a small account challenge. So kind of a build up and kind of build it up over time. And
Hmm.
then along those lines, kind of doing the trade reviews with that account. So it's, I'm still continuing to do the same trades and, same setups. It's just, kind of building it with a small dollar amount and kind of building it up that way. But I think the spotlight thing is a tricky thing because, you know, you have to be 100% truthful on what you're doing. And there's a lot of guys out there that will trade certain styles or call out certain trades, but once they get off the live, then it's like they do their own thing. Um, which
Right.
which is fine. I mean, you have multiple, most people have multiple accounts or whatever. But like for me, like I like to trade certain setups. So in that same, in the same thing, like most of my setups are going to look exactly the same. So, you know, in the spotlight wise, it becomes a little bit less on me, I guess, because I feel like the process of it, the whole thing is pretty much the same thing every trade.
Hmm.
So as long as I can keep it along those same lines, it's not necessarily a tough thing. But it is tough because I think I try to build a process. I try to help people build a process, and I think the spotlight thing comes into where I want people to succeed, and I want people
Hmm.
to build their process and can make money along the way. Um, and I think that's where the spotlight comes in, where I think that takes more of a toll on me than being showing a loss or showing a win on live or whatever on a trade review.
It's more about how the other people are doing.
Yeah, and I think that's just it's more of my mentality of coming from the banking industry. My job currently is I work with a lot of business owners. So on that standpoint, I help a lot of business owners succeed on what they want to do in their
Hmm.
working lives and getting stuff done and building a business. And I think that translates very well to what I do with Vanta, because a lot of these people are just doing the same thing. It's just a different industry. You're trying to better your life by building in trading.
Yeah.
You're building a process in trading. So it's kind of along the similar lines where I take a lot of pride in, like, when you have someone that says like, hey, I use that setup today that we talked about, or we jump on a call with individuals. And I think that's the thing that I love most about it, is like when people want to learn and want to pick up stuff.
Hmm.
We love jumping on calls, doing the late night charting, stuff like that, because I think that's where you learn more about the market.
Yeah. And teaching it, I think, just helps you learn too.
Yeah, just the more you dig into the market, the more you're in the market looking at candles. Not even if you're trading, you just pick up on stuff. It's
Hmm.
you see trend, you see structure, you see all these things that play out every day. And when you're talking about it with someone, and I love doing it with Flary, I love doing it with Baba, because
Yep.
all of our minds are a little bit different. So when you have multiple people that are talking about the same thing, we pick up on stuff. Like I pick up on something that Flary might not, but he brings in another aspect of it to where I'm like, oh wow, I never even thought about that.
What I always find fascinating is when you get in those discussions and someone's like, "Oh, I saw this that I really like there," and you're like, "Oh, I didn't see that, but I saw this," and it's
Yeah,
another thing. Then they both line up in the same spot, and you're like, "Oh shit, okay, all right."
yeah, yeah. Which I think that's the goal of the community. I mean, we have a lot of good traders in our group, but all of us trade a little bit differently.
Hmm.
We all look to pretty much trade the same way. If we're sweeping lows and we're trying to get into longs, I mean, a lot of us are thinking about that the same way, kind of looking in the same spots, but at the same time, we all use different execution tools.
Right.
But it's interesting because when Baba uses something, I may not use it, but we're typically getting interested in the same areas.
Right.
We're initiating the same areas. But it's funny when you start trading with these people, you start to realize like where they're trading. You can kind of just tell from looking at the
Ah.
market. Like, when Flary or Baba, calls out a trade, I'm like, dude, I knew you were long a couple minutes ago.
Right.
Like, you didn't have to tell me. I knew from just being around you.
Yeah,
But
yeah. All right. Two things here. You mentioned Vanta, and I got into. I think there was a little bit of discussion between me and Baba Yaga last time he was on over the proper pronunciation, but I heard you say Vanta. So are we the majority?
I said Vanta because I was agreeing with you.
Ah,
I
okay.
honestly I don't know how it's said. I've called it Vanta for a long time, but I think that's just because
Because of
Baba
Fanta
picked it out.
soda. Oh,
Because well, because Baba picked it out. He was the kind of the lead behind the name. I was fine with whatever.
yeah.
Um, but when you said it, I was like, I don't know, that kind of makes sense to say it that way.
It sounds kind of like Latin or Spanish almost, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a like what he said, it's a paint color. So
Right.
I'm not surprised that it would be called Vanta. But then you have Fanta, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe it is Vanta. So
Right. All right. Speaking of Baba Yaga, last time he was on, he shared like one of the, I think he called it the lowest moment in his life where he was ready to quit trading. I think he said he was up at like 2 o'clock in the morning in his garage, and I was on the phone with you for hours, and you kind of pulled him up out of that. I'm curious to hear your side of that. Like, I want to know why. Like, why did you take the chance? Why did you encourage him to continue? What did you see that made you think that he was going to make it?
yeah, so at that point in our trading, we were probably trading a couple years together.
Hmm.
And so when you grow up in the trading world, I guess with someone, we build a lot of our process together.
Right.
Now we're two different style traders, but we've developed into what we want to be as a trader. But I do remember that, and I think the main thing with trading is you almost have to do it with someone. Um,
Mm.
and I think if it's either a mentor or a trading partner or even a trading community, I think you almost have to do it with someone because there is going to be ups and downs, and at the beginning there's a lot more downs than there are ups. And
No
and
kidding.
just working through those and kind of building through those, I think is the main thing. You always hear people say that the old thing, you need 10,000 hours to master a subject. Well,
Right.
in trading, that's years, if not more.
Right.
So when you're working with someone that is so close to that goal, and that's not saying that we're anywhere near being masters or gurus or whatever, but in the same time, I know where he has been and where he was at that point, and he was he's profitable, he's a great trader, and you could say I was taking a risk, but at the same time, um, I just think he was so close to where he wanted to be in trading to where it made sense to me because it was one of the eval accounts that I was working on, and at that time I'm just like, dude, you just trade this. I mean, I was
Yeah.
trading two at the time, so it wasn't like for me it wasn't a big deal. I would rather pay a monthly fee if it's able to work with him,
Yeah.
to kind of pass that, and then because I know he's good for it. It is what it is. But at the same time, I mean, it was just with him being so close and being so down. It was, I had confidence in him that I knew he was going to make it. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. It sounds like it was just one, like that was his make or break moment. Like, this is the point where you either go forward and you succeed, or you give up and you fail.
And I think a lot of traders fall into that where you might not have an individual to talk to, and that's what I talked to him about. I'm like, these type of things, like, come to me. Like, if you need someone to
Hmm.
talk to about your bad days or need someone to talk to about your good days, because I mean, those are the two things. You're either going to have a good day or a bad day. Not a lot of days are in the middle.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you have break even days, but they're typically you either have a green day or a red day.
Well, then you either feel good or you feel shitty. Like, it's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
just it's usually not a like, okay, today was a day.
Yeah. So on those days, I told him, I'm like, dude, like, even if you get into those days where you start pressing a little bit, just call me, like, in the middle of the trade. And we're typically talking anyway, but I'm like, if
Hmm.
you fall into one of those days, just shoot me a call, because there's a lot of times where you'll talk to me and I can at least tell where you're at in the day just by talking with him, just because we've talked for so long. Where I'm like, dude, just shut it down. Or hey, you've had a great day. If you want to step on it, but I wouldn't give back this I
More
wouldn't,
than right.
more than you're willing to lose. but kind of going back to that, like, I've went back to him on multiple occasions, not necessarily for like account wise, but like, you have to have someone that you kind of
Yeah.
rely on and kind of, is your kind of rock in the market. And I'll talk to my wife about it, but she has no idea what trading really is. I'll explain it or whatever, but at the same time, like, I give her the ups and downs, and that's what I told him. I'm like, hey, it's not something that you necessarily need to hide, but I
Right.
would just say, like, the market is hard.
Yeah.
Like, I am trying my hardest, but at the same time, you're willing to be vulnerable with people around you, um, during your struggles, during your ups, and your downs. And I think that's what's key in the market of growing, is because I think that builds your maturity on those days where you do have a bad day, or and it's not even bad like P&L wise. Just like, let's just say that you have a bad day in the sense of nothing works, where you could end up being break even on the day, but at the same time you feel like it
Do you
was
want
a
an
hard
example? You get a
Well,
great entry off the lows, and it comes within a tick of hitting your take profit and reverses back and
all the day.
wipes you out at
Yeah.
break even. Just a break
Yeah.
even, we'll say. Like that moment is sometimes really hard to recover from because you saw an almost profitable trade and you're trying to, like, in your mind you're up, but you're
Yeah.
not.
Yep. And those are the type of things where, like, I told him, I'm like, dude, just like that needs to be a call to me, to where if it's something, and I do the same thing to him. Like, if I have a day where, like this morning, I was up multiple times on multiple trades that all got stopped out at break even. It was kind of that chop at the beginning of the market.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was one of those where, like, I was right on which way it was going to go, but they didn't make it easy. So,
Yeah.
but like, just sitting back and kind of looking at that and saying, well, I just took 4 break even stops where I was up multiple points, right near my take profit.
Hmm.
But at the same time, like, I told him in that moment, I'm like, dude, like, we just need to be on the same page. So, like, if you're having a bad day, or if you need to talk about anything with trading wise, or even life, I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
do that. But at the same time, like, anything you need, like, I'm here for you. And I think that's what, being part of the trading community and being, in that same mindset is, we both want to better our lives through trading. And we're
Right.
building this together. And I told him, I'm like, you need to rely on me. I'm going to rely on you, and we'll kind of do this together. And where he was at that point, where it wasn't necessarily like I wanted, or like I didn't trust that he was not going to make it. I knew he was going to make it.
Right.
He was just so close in where he was in his process, to where I knew that he could make it, and I knew that he was going to make it. And that's why, I would have taken the risk on multiple, on other people, but I'm
Right.
very, very close with him, and I just want to see those people succeed. Like, kind of like Vanta is, like, getting into these, the people who are joining, and the people who are in the room. Like, that's the main goal, is to get people that, want to succeed and want to be around, and, at the same time, they're willing to learn. And I think that's
Hmm.
the benefit for us is, we help people grow as traders.
Just the talking about being vulnerable and sharing like those struggles and letting people know that, like, it's such a toxic place that Twitter can be, and like the Reddit subforums and some of those other places where it's really hard to share a losing trade and like something you learned from it. Nobody wants to see that apparently. But like that's what we're all going through. We're all having those days. We're all having those moments, and we need to know that there's a path out of it. We need to see that there's a way to move forward. And having people like you, Baba, Flary's another good example. Like anybody that can get up there and be like, "Hey, I had a shitty day today. This is what I learned from it. This is my plan to get back on track." Like we
Yeah.
learn much more from those moments, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal of, like, what our room is because,
Yeah.
you want to be truthful, you want to be transparent, and there's no way that you're going to be 100% green every day.
No.
It's just not going to happen. Now, our goal is to be green a lot of the days, And then, the days that, you have struggle, or the day that the market, like last Thursday,
Hmm.
where we went up, I don't know, it seemed like 1,000 points, but I know it wasn't.
Wait, last Thursday was the 15th.
Yeah, where we just went straight up
Yeah,
all day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember
And,
that week.
on those type of days, like I was long and cut it, at my take profits, but at the same time, we were just going through daily levels that I had from, a while back. And it's like we had no respect for those. Well, on all
Yeah.
those, I took stops, because
Right.
a normal day, those trades work, or
Hmm.
percentage wise, those trades work. So at the same time, like you can take a green day back to a break even, a red day, fairly quickly in this market. And I think that's the thing with being just transparent and being vulnerable in the market, is because I want to be truthful in the sense of, hey, this setup percentage wise works, but
Hmm.
today the market had its own idea, and and it was not going to change. And those are the days where, like, that's just part of doing business. I mean,
Yeah.
you can have the best plan in the world in this market, and that's what I love about trading, is because it's not. I mean, realistically, for money wise, I wish it was just like black and white, but there's a whole lot of gray. And all these setups, like, you can have the perfect setup. That doesn't mean it's going to work. And
Right. Yep.
that's kind of what I love about it, because it's a very testing profession.
What I've always liked is the same reason why I like doing maintenance and like being a troubleshooter, like working on instrumentation and controls and PLCs and that kind of stuff. Is
Yeah.
no day is the same. Every day I come in, I got a different problem that I have to solve. It never feels like a routine or boring. And the markets are kind of similar. Like every day is a different opportunity. It's a different day. There's parallels, and there's definitely scenarios that kind of rhyme with each other, but you never really see the same thing, the same exact thing, over and over and over again.
Well, it's so funny you say that, because from like my profession in banking, being on the commercial side, working with businesses, like I view trading a lot similarly. So like when
Hmm.
I look at trading, and I look at like the normal day to day, like the day to day in my working life as a banker is, I may have multiple meetings that day with people
Hmm.
in the industry. So if I'm meeting with two people who make, manufacturing of some sort, let's just say they make clothes, that business is going to be run two separate ways, two separate management styles, two separate, cash flows. So in the same way, I'm looking at the same industry, like I would be looking at the same trade, but at the
Right.
same time, there's a lot more that goes into the detail of that industry or that trade that is different on every time frame. So, it's a similar thing. So, like looking at those two industries, they're never going to be. It's never going to be the same deal. It's never going to be the
Right.
same loan.
Right.
It's never going to be the same. The same way in trading, like what you described, like every trade, it could be the same setup, but delta could be a little bit different. There's
Right.
different,
Right.
the volume profile could look a little bit different. There's an LVN below us, or HVN, or whatever. So it's all going to look a little bit different. And that's what I love, because it's a very challenging testing thing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The other part I like about it too is that there's no real right answer either. Like people, there's so many different strategies and styles out there, and people who've had success. Like you just got to find like what's yours,
Oh, absolutely.
and what works for you. And there's so many different options out there. You don't have to lock yourself into any one thing if you don't like it, if it's not for you.
Yeah, and that's what I think so interesting, because I told Flurry this, like when we were back in the U Trade days, is you could have a single indicator that is, let's just say it's RSI, just because a
Yeah.
lot of people use that, or MACD or whatever. If you trade that the same way every single time, you should theoretically be profitable, is
Hmm.
because you're going to pick up on stuff that is the only way that you trade that. So like, like a lot of people say, like you could have a line on the chart, you're long above it, short below it. It's going to work. It's just a matter of how profitable you're going to be. So that's what's
Right.
interesting about like how you build your process. Like I could take Baba's process, or, Baba's charts, and I could look at it and say, well, that makes sense. That doesn't really make sense to me. But if I used his stuff, there's no way I'd be profitable. because
Right.
he looks at it one way that I would look at it differently.
Yeah.
And that's what I think is so interesting because, you have a lot of people out there that who are experts in what they do, or they put themselves out there as experts that, they share a
Right.
certain thing where they share a certain way that they trade, but unless you know the whys behind that, it's never going to make sense. So like that's where I think digging in and doing like your Frankenstein type of build process, where like a lot of my process I've taken just with working with Baba and kind of building it that way. I picked up a lot of stuff from Flary. I picked up a lot of stuff from other traders in the community where, you know, it's all a Frankenstein of what your process is. And it's a matter of how it works. But the reason why it works is because I was the one who built it.
Yeah. It's
You
yours.
know what I mean? It's the
Yeah.
way it makes sense to me. So, and that's what's hard too about the teaching aspect of it, because you can only teach, like if I was to teach the whole thing in one thing, it wouldn't make sense to a lot of people. So like what I
Right.
like to do is I like to do like, I really like looking at delta on a 30-minute rolling time frame. So every 30 minutes I'll roll the volume profile, I'll roll the delta, and I'll see the delta and the volume in that 30-minute. Well, when you add in all the other stuff, it gets kind of convoluted. So what I like to do is I'll break out individual stuff, and that's what I'll kind of teach on and how I would trade that just specifically.
Hmm.
Which makes a lot of sense to me, because when, then they can take that piece, but they may not like the other piece. So if you're kind of trying to teach it all in one, I feel like it gets a little bit convoluted. So that's why I like breaking it out in those individual pieces, and hopefully someone can pick up on it and even make it their own.
Yeah, and that's the goal. Yeah.
Yep. Take that process and then basically say, well, hey, what if you did this? And then, to me, I've never looked at it that way. Well, then I'm going to look at it a little bit differently, because if he looks at it this way and it makes sense to him, I'll at least give it a try. I mean,
Hmm.
there's other eyes on it. And I think that's what's so cool about trading.
Yeah. Friends, family, and loved ones, I bet you haven't purchased a Father's Day gift yet, have you? Not to fear, the leaders in below the waist grooming are here. I'm talking about our friends at Manscaped. They're saving the day yet again with the total package for father figure in your life this year. It's time to upgrade his game from waist to face with this exclusive offer. Have him join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get 20% off and free shipping with the code 2bulls at manscaped.com. I'm supposed to tell a funny manscaping story or talk about how hairy my dad is, but I'm really not that close with my father. He does like a good beard trimmer, though. But for those of you who are familiar with your father's grooming routines, or lack thereof, then you can start with the ultimate Father's Day MVP, the Performance Package 4.0. Inside this package, he'll find their signature Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the brand new Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer, crop preserver, ball deodorant, crop reviver, toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of his goodies. And we can't forget about the moneymaker. Manscaped has absolutely changed the game with their new Beard Hedger Pro Kit for fathers around the world. Included is the Beard Hedger Trimmer, Beard Shampoo and Conditioner, Beard Oil, Beard Balm, and 2 free gifts with their signature beard comb and scissors. This is the perfect gift for those of us who have had a normal childhood. And we all know dads love comfort. If his grooming routine is already dialed in, make sure to hook him up with Manscaped's Boxers 2.0. These are without a doubt the best boxers for men of all ages, and it's sure to give you that awkward moment we all love when your dad sees you bought him underwear for Father's Day. So whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun, these moisture-wicking boxers breathe without breaking a sweat. So get 20% off and free shipping with code 2bulls at manscaped.com. It's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code 2bulls. Make this Father's Day one you won't forget with manscaped.com. The other part I wanted to touch on is, like you said, you work a full-time job. You're working at a bank,
Yeah.
and you're still trading like during most of these hours. So you had to really adapt your style to kind of fit that life that you live. I'm kind of curious, like how that went into it. Like, was it harder to build something that you could do while doing other tasks, or was it just kind of just how it ended up working out?
It's kind of funny because I think when I first started trading, I really wanted to be more along the lines of like the Flaries or the Babas, where you have those 100-point runners on NQ, or you have those bigger trades.
Yeah.
But what I got into was I would try to trade like that, and then I would, get a phone call from a customer. I would have a customer stop in at the bank, and I'm just like, I cannot do this. like I'll be in a meeting thinking of, well, I hope my take profit got filled. I'll be
Right.
thinking about that other stuff like while it's going on. So the way I kind of developed was, I guess you could kind of classify it more as like a scalper, but the way that I view it is, I'm taking my R that I want on a trade, and I'm basically just adding a little bit more size and taking my take profits a little quicker.
Yeah.
So, where I'm more in and out of the market on these bigger moves where, these other guys might be in for an hour long trade. I might be in for 10 minutes or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's still the same process. It's just a matter of how you take your take profits, how you do your risk. But I just knew that, like, with my industry of kind of the unknown of when someone needs something or when someone's going to stop by or something along those lines, I kind of had to develop into a more short term trader. Um, just be
Hmm.
more out of the market, which actually kind of makes sense a little bit more to me because of my risk, profile being in banking. When I feel like I'm longer in the market, I feel like there's more of an unknown that can happen. So, and this
Uh,
goes back to like the Trump tweets and stuff like that, where, you could be in a trade, you could be in a trade and all of a sudden be down. And, you could be up a couple, 30, 40 points, and all of a sudden you're down, your stop gets hit. And it's just like
yeah.
that.
Trump comes out and says Powell needs to quit tightening, and suddenly the markets go
And I
insane.
think, when he was in the market, or I guess when
In
he
the
was the
office.
president, yeah, in
Yeah.
office, it kind of switched on me where I'm like, I don't know, I kind of really like just trading my structure. When it comes to like news drop, I don't really trade a lot of news drops. I'll trade after, but I don't want to be positioned like during the news because there is so much unknown that's in the market where, you know,
And there's
uh,
so little liquidity too.
yeah, and one PR, one tweet that gets put out, and all of a sudden your trade that was a great trade turns into a real shitty trade real quick.
Yeah, I just recently had one like that where I was long and then my stop got filled about 20 points lower because the MES liquidity was so thin.
Yeah. And there's
Like,
just so much unknown, like in what people, market makers or even politicians or stuff like that, where and especially in today's world where, we're pushing up in the markets with an active war in
uh-huh.
Ukraine. I mean, like, a lot of it just doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I don't think you can trade. It's just trading your structure, trading your process. You can't trade what the unknowns are. And I think that's where it came to me where the longer I felt like I was in the market, the more unknown or the more that could happen to that trade or that structure or whatever it is, where I just didn't necessarily want to be in it. Now it all kind of tied together because of the fact where I wanted to be more present in what my day job was. Now,
Hmm.
a lot of the times where I'll be watching the markets while I'm working, looking for a setup because a lot of the times where, there's a lot of wasted time if you're just looking at candles. So a lot of the setups that I have are just like, I have, I'll box in an area where I want to be interested in a long or interested in the short, and I'll just flip over the charts real quick and say, well, yeah, I'll take this, or no, I'll pass on this one. You know what I mean? So
Right,
it's,
right.
and I think when you're looking at the charts all day, I think you can get a little bit more of like, I need to be in the market. Where the way that I trade now, it's like, unless it's in my area, I have no interest in being in the market because it's not like an A+ setup.
How did you get to that mindset? Because I think that's one of the things that I'm kind of struggling with is I have my areas. I do a fairly decent job of respecting them, but I get about one a day or so that ends up being just a little bit outside of it. Like I've convinced myself that I can justify that this is okay.
Yeah, and I think that becomes, it's just more of the I don't know, like knowing the probabilities of your trades, because at the same time, like, I know where if I'm getting long or short in an area that I have of interest, it's so much higher of a probability of being a winning trade than being in
Hmm.
the middle of these two areas. So, like, for instance, if I have a box at 15,000, a box at 15, 100,
Hmm.
anything in between there doesn't really make sense to me because it's all going to be, liquidity grabs. It's going to be chop kind of in that area, or, you push into that area where you're looking for a potential short. And then all of a sudden you have someone step off sides and then you slam the button. Anything in between there to me is really just more of like innovating a trade. And I don't really love the innovative trades. I like being more methodical, like in an area, execution, tools, fire, where I can consider this an A setup.
Mm, yes. And there's also something to be said about, and we're kind of talking a little bit about this before I hit the record button, but not being the first one, over the trench, to
Oh,
use a World
absolutely,
War analogy. I want to wait where those big market participants are waiting. I want to trade where they're
absolutely,
trading because I want them on my side.
absolutely. Because my couple lots aren't going to be firing what their hundreds of lots are doing.
Yes. Oh, you mean my three micros can't move the market?
Well, your three micros can, mine can't.
No, but I swear they go after my stop sometimes.
Well, that just means that you're in the right area.
Yeah, and that's what that's another way to look at it that I've been trying to shift that focus. When you get that low tick and then it turns around and goes your way, it's like, oh shit, I was really close.
Yeah, yeah, and I like on these trades that I'm talking about, like, and these ranges can be 20, 30 points wide, but at the same time, like, it's not just, and that's where the teaching aspect comes into it, because it's not just a flat buy or sell. Like,
Hmm.
there, like, whatever goes into your process of your execution tool, like that's in play all day every day. And I don't trade a lot of Globex, but the setups happen during Globex. It's just a matter, there's not a lot of liquidity on the market to make these moves happen faster.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, like, I'll trade Globex if it's like a really good setup, but I would rather trade where there's a large amount of liquidity, like RTH. And typically, like, I'd like to trade, the first hour of the day.
Hmm.
And I think, I don't limit it to that, but if there's a really good setup throughout the day, like, I'll take it. But at the same time, like, I don't want to be in front of the market all day.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be in it. I want to make my points, and then I want to,
Go and enjoy the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, enjoy family, golf, whatever, whatever you want to do. There's more to life than sitting here and watching candles print all the time. Now, but
There
what the
is.
fun, but there's a lot of time that needs to go into your trading process, you're building what your trading plan is to have that happen. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck is, you see people who post their successes online or post their house or cars or whatever it is that they got from
Yeah.
trading. And it's very hard to say, like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. Or why hasn't it happened for me yet? And I think that's the hardest thing, even in life, when you look at
Yes.
social media and stuff like that, is you don't know how long it took for that person to get there. But at the same time, you also don't know if that's truthful. So,
Well, there's that, and even if it is truthful, I mean, life's not fair. Some people are blessed with just gifts that not everybody gets. Some people have to work harder to get the same kind of success.
oh, absolutely. Well, and two, I mean, like I was saying, I mean, you could look at a lot of people, like I posted a quote in our room about, like, goals and aiming high. So, like
Hmm.
like in my mind, the way that I view that is aiming high and missing isn't always a bad thing. It's when you aim real low and you actually hit it. It's when it becomes a little bit difficult to push on and succeed. Like, what I view that in trading is,
Right.
you know, I want to be perfect. I want to have a perfect plan. Now, it's never going to happen, and I know I'm going to fall short of that. But at the same time, putting in the time, the dedication, being patient with your process is one of the hardest things that you can do. But at the same time, a lot of people don't see that side of your success, and I
Yeah.
think that's where it becomes a little bit more.
That's not the sexy side.
No, it's not. It's really hard to talk about. It's really hard to say, "Hey, I spent 5 hours on a Saturday after a hard day on Friday figuring out what the hell happened on Friday." You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, no
Right.
no one wants to hear that, but at the same time, like, that's what has to happen for you to be successful. But no one really wants to talk about it, and that's where I think it becomes interesting in our room, where, like, in our room, like, we do those town hall specials and stuff like that because of the fact, we want people to ask questions. We want to be able to
Yeah.
teach, because I think it only benefits me and Baba too, because
Yes.
when we're looking at it and we're teaching it and we're looking at it and we're looking at it a little bit differently because someone asked a question a little bit different. I think there's always something to build. And I know like Flary, I was talking to him this week. He looks at doing something for an hour a day of learning, like learning about the
Hmm.
market. And 1 hour a week is something to where it's not in his process. So learning about something that is a little bit different than what his normal process is, which I've never thought about that before. But at the same time, like learning a new thing for 1 hour a week that doesn't go against what your process is, but kind of is a building block to something to where you could pick up or add to your toolbox at a later date. But
I feel like we've talked to him about that, something similar. Like,
yeah,
and I like that aspect too, because you have to. It's really hard to learn something, get excited about it, and then not want to throw it onto your chart. So you got to be really, intentional and limit
yeah.
like how much of that stuff creeps in before you're ready.
Well, and like I've been working on a thing with it's a process of like a reversal. So,
Hmm.
for me to have that and being able to put it on my chart recently, it probably took 6 months, even maybe even a little bit longer of like looking at it and seeing the process behind it and seeing like how I would actually trade that before I put it on my chart. So like I've
Wow.
never thought about what Flary meant about that
Hmm.
until recently, but like learning the stuff that I necessarily wouldn't pick up on like and I don't know what he's looking at, but like I've done deep dives into like gain gain levels and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like there's been some other stuff where I've dug into, but I've never really put it on my calendar to like, hey, I'm going to do this once a week. But I think it's such a
Hmm.
smart thing to do because you pick up on stuff that you normally wouldn't let into your process. And it's not
Oh shit.
necessarily that you'll add it to your process, but it's something to where you at least know what it is and you know what the benefits are for it.
I swear you're reading my notes because you keep front running my questions. I was going to ask if you had any suggestions for like trying to figure out your process, but I think we just kind of covered that.
Yeah, I think it's just trial and error, you know.
Mm.
And I know Baba talked about this when he was on, like when we were first developing, we would look at, different
Hmm.
concepts, we would read different concepts, watch videos. And I think it's just more of like what works for you because there's stuff that that I would pick up on stuff that we would be working on together that he necessarily wouldn't. But it's just a way of like the way that my mind works compared to his. So it's like working through some of that, especially when you're doing it with someone, I think is so beneficial because when you're getting into the markets, there's so much information out there, and
Yeah.
it's just a matter of what works for your process. And like I said, I mean, you could have any indicator in the world that's out there. I mean, maybe not like lunar moons and stuff like that, but
Oh no, apparently that works too.
oh, it does. It does. I've never used it. Maybe I'll
Somebody,
do one of those. I don't know. Maybe I'll do one of those hour
I
sessions on it and see if I can work on it.
think you should do 2 hours that week.
But too, but that's the thing. Like, if it works for someone, like I would never tell anyone to say, well, that's never going to work because at the
Yeah,
same time, my mind doesn't think like your mind, and your mind doesn't think like mine. Now, our goal is to be able to help traders and teach them what makes sense to us. But at the same time, everyone is going to look at it a little bit differently.
I gotta say though, whoever is successful trading lunar moon cycles, I think that is more of a testament to the power of good risk management than anything else.
Yes.
Because in my mind, that means and I've been wanting to try this out as an experiment, but making a something that just randomly enters a position and using good risk reward parameters, seeing what kind of expectancy you get out of that.
Yeah. I mean that's the name of the game is risk.
Yeah.
And when I first started, I mean, risk was an afterthought, but
Right. That always the way.
digging in, digging into what we're doing now, like, we were talking about this, like the trade yesterday. I mean, that level that we were talking about in prep in our room
Hmm.
that we ended up taking long was 3 or 4 points wide on Nasdaq. So like
Yeah.
that's a very tight risk, tight reward type of play where when I was first starting trading, I think that's just the maturity of where you become as a trader is getting to a risk reward that makes sense to you, but also it doesn't intimidate you. And I think that's so, because when you get into futures, there's so much money that can be made just by clicking the button. There's also a lot of money that can be lost.
Yes.
And I think my when I was first getting into trading, I had successes early without really knowing like why I was having successes.
I think those are more dangerous.
I know. And I came from trading more of like just the buy and holds of just
Yeah.
small mid cap kind of stocks. And then it was funny because one of my buddies at the previous bank I was at was talking to me about crypto like back in the day, and that was like such a different world than what I was used to. Um,
Yeah.
so going from like, you know, not a lot of volatility to this thing is up and down so crazy. You learn very fast. You learn very fast about risk, risk reward on these trades. And it's so funny. I
Hmm.
have a funny story about crypto. So like, getting into trading, getting into, I can say shit coins, I guess, on here,
Oh
but
yeah.
getting into some of these smaller coins. It was funny because I got into one of these where they were supposed to have um, like, and I can't. It was a acceptance of some sort of new exchange or something along those lines, and this thing absolutely ripped. And I put a
Hmm.
small amount of money in there. I was up like $15,000 on this. Like, this was like newer into crypto. I'm like, dude, this is so easy. Like 3 days later, like 3 days later, I'm back at like break even, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, there's no way I can do this. This is absolutely insane. But but it's funny because that's what kind of led me into the futures market because it was funny. I saw one of the commercials for one of the prop firms on there. I'm like, I didn't even know that you could actually trade that. So it was funny. That's how
Yeah.
I kind of got started into the futures market, and that's where I met Baba. I actually met Baba in crypto. Um,
Oh yeah.
which was
Probably
pretty funny.
Flurry too. When did he get a start there?
I didn't meet Flary until after. That would have been, I guess, the OFL day.
Maybe. Yeah. You were there for
Yeah,
the pre OFL days?
I was not. That
Ah.
was
Okay.
Kingdom, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think Joel was
yeah,
part of that group.
yeah. So I was not. I was not in that group. I know Baba was. I never got really tied into them, and then I ended up getting into to Flary through Baba just with their connection, and then we ended up getting real close, which is
Hmm.
kind of how I got brought onto U Trade and stuff like that. But
Is U Trade going to come back? I keep hoping Flurry's going to bring it back in a year or two.
I don't know. That'd be nice. I no, I hope so. I told Flair anytime he wants to come teach in the room or be on live mic, he's more than welcome because
Oh, I see him on there all the time, and I love it.
he
I love it.
he is such a good trader.
He's such a good teacher too.
Yeah, I was going to say the key with him is he's such a good teacher of the way that he
Hmm.
views the market. And that's why I said I love when we do those late night sessions like we did. I guess this was on Monday or Tuesday, whatever we did it.
Yeah.
I love when we do those late night sessions and he's able to join us because when we're talking about stuff, he brings so much insight,
Yep.
to the market, and he's able to teach it. And then on top of it, you have Baba's, Southern accent that's on there as well. So it's really nice.
Oh God, yeah. Does he throw in any of those Southernisms too?
Oh, all the time,
It's
all the
hotter than
time.
squirrel's nuts. Shit like
Um,
that.
yeah, he throws them in. I need to start writing them down so I can remember them and I can say them. I can say them later.
Write them
But
down, and I'll help you make a list. We'll make like a crib sheet where you can make up your own, just taking parts of them,
yeah,
trolling with
yeah,
that.
for sure.
Getting towards the end here, and I know you probably got some family that's itching to see you. But I want to ask you one last question. If you could tell yourself anything back when you were starting out that you think could have helped you out then, that like something you wish you knew when you first started, what would that be?
I would say that it's going to be a process, and uh, I would say, yeah, it's going to be a process. It's never going to be easy. And at the same time, stick with it because that's basically what I did. At that same time, when I was first starting off, I had successes early,
Hmm.
which was kind of detrimental a little bit because at the same time I knew I could do it, uh, but I didn't realize how hard the market was.
Yeah.
So kind of going through the process, with Baba is it was a tough process because I did have successes and I did have payouts and I did pull money from the market. And then there was a time where it's like I was building and kind of building a process to where I had a lot of downs, but
Hmm.
I think that's part of just becoming who you are as a trader. Is just the trial and error of getting into what your process is. Now, realistically, if I could tell myself back 6, 7 years ago that it was going to take this long to become profitable, I'd say pick another profession. But
Well, that my last question that goes with those is: would you have listened to anything you told yourself?
probably not.
And isn't that the truth? I mean, Dan and I, when we started this podcast almost 3 years ago now, like we got some really amazing people to come on and just like give us like the keys to the kingdom. Like here's all of our research, here's our courses that we've got. Like George from Trade Pro Academy, he gave us like the entire futures course that he put together. And even having all that stuff handed to us, like still had to learn all those lessons by
Oh yeah,
myself,
I mean, I don't
for
think
myself.
that I don't think that there's a way not to learn those lessons. I just think that, like what we're trying to do at Vanta is to speed that lesson along to where
Yes.
there's maybe not 3 years of it or whatever it is, or how long it takes people is, because the fact that, when you get into I know at least when I got into trading, I really didn't have like a process. When I
No, me neither.
like when I dove into the charts, like I was looking at the here and now. Looking
Hmm.
left was like an afterthought. But the levels that I look at now, it's like, there's a certain process that I do when I look at these, the edges of HVNs. I'll call them inventory levels, to where a lot of people get stuck in these levels, where there is a process to where why I trade the way I trade. But kind of back to your question, like there's no way that I would ever have listened to myself now,
I
because
know,
I
I
mean
know.
I would have tried it. I would have tried it for sure. Not saying that I would have understood what I look at, but I would definitely would have tried it, because I tried a bunch of stuff off YouTube that didn't make any damn sense.
Right.
But like building your process is going to take time. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I guess the biggest thing that I would say to new traders is like, there's no time for success. Like there's no timeline for success. It's just a matter of how long it's going to take you to click.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I think when you get into it is like, trading's, I mean, you just have to know that trading is going to be hard. And now there's multiple types of traders. There's multiple people out there that like to, that have certain ways that they trade. Like, I think getting into trading is just like, if I was new to trading now with what I know, I would definitely be in sim for like a year. Like there's no way like risking any sort of money or capital or whatever would make any sense to me, because like there, just with my knowledge of like knowing where I came from, there's going to
Hmm.
be so many more downs than there are ups, and there's going to be so much trial and error that goes into trading, where it's gonna take a toll on you, not only through training but kind of personally too, because
Yeah.
in trading you'll never feel you'll never feel as bad as you do when you just have shitty days.
Yeah.
And the hard part is because they reopen the market the same day,
Right.
so it's like you have a bad day and you're like, it's gonna open again in 2 hours and then I get to trade it again. This is crazy.
Uh, oh
Right.
God. If I can go back 3 years, I think I would switch my all my charts off of line charts and learn how to read a goddamn candlestick sooner. It
Yes.
took me 6 months to figure that out.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's just so much knowledge out there that
I know, I know.
it's so hard. It's so hard to think of like what works for each individual. Where like, if you're a new trader, like I feel like everyone starts off with the same indicators and then you kind of build from there.
Hmm.
I really wish, like, if I was starting off again, I really wish that I could. I mean, like you said, like look at candlesticks, know what they were, kind of looking at reversals. And then from there I would look at more of like the order flow stuff. Like I wouldn't even
Hmm.
look at a normal indicator like a RSI or MACD or whatever those are. I would look at
Yeah.
more of like what goes into a candle, what goes into
Yeah.
that 5 minute candle of delta, volume profile within that candle. Why when we come back to that candle, why does that candle um, hold the line on a
Mm-hmm.
move? And I just think that there's so much into the nitty gritty of just looking at a specific candle that people it's not something
Uh,
that tells you to buy and sell.
no,
Uh,
but it tells a story
but
though,
it
and
tells a
that's such a
story.
fascinating. Every candle is a battle, and you can kind of reconstruct like the battle after the fact by looking at the candle and seeing like what happened. Oh, sellers made a push, but they got fought back. Or
It's so funny too because that's what me and Baba were talking about at our town hall. Like when we were talking about these specific candle setups, like they leave like a little breadcrumb behind, like a
hmm
little footprint behind, where when you go back and you look at that individual candle, like it makes a whole lot of sense why we come back
hmm
to that candle and test it. Because, like on a lot of these, it's like you have initiate a push on these candles where it leaves like single print within that candle. Well, if you're not looking at that specific candle, you would never know that it's not there, or
yeah,
that it was there. So like when you're digging into these specific candles, like yeah, that would be like the ideal if I was starting off, like like what you said, like learning the ins and out of why a candle prints the way it prints.
hmm
What type of candles are which, and the why of what's inside of a candle.
yeah, oh yeah, that's
I
all.
think that would be
I mean,
such a smart thing as a baseline to structure.
well, I mean, I'm just thinking back of like looking at line charts when I was, at the steel mill when I was still doing a job. It's like, what was I thinking? A line chart. But the first time like somebody like explained to me like what a candle actually means and like what kind of information you can glean out of it, I think that was my first big aha moment in my trading
Yeah,
journey. And yeah, I love to have been able to experience that a lot sooner.
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, this has been great, man. And I just want to say one more time that, you and Baba are really providing a great blueprint out there for showing people how to come up with their process that works for them. And I hope you guys continue doing that as we go, you know, into the next year. I hope you guys pick up steam. I hope it just continues to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, that's going to take us to the end. I'd like to say thank you to everybody who stuck around to the end here. And Mr. Banks, thank you so much for stopping by and the things that you shared with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
If anybody wants to know more about Mr. Banks or Vanta, you can visit vantatrading.com to learn more. You can check us out at twobullsinachinashop.com. We'll be back soon with another exciting episode. But until then, tickle that 5-star rating like a market maker going after my stops and take care.
Two Bulls in a China Shop is an entertainment program, and all thoughts and opinions expressed in the show belong to the hosts and not of any company. They are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security or investment product. It is only intended to provide entertainment about stocks and the financial industry of trading. If you make trades based on what you hear in this show, you assume all risks for those trades.